Seriously, it's my final plug. Check out my sushi video. It's on the WHBY Facebook page, my Facebook page as well. If you want to laugh, because there's not a lot to laugh about in the world of outside the box these days. So if you want to separate for about 4 minutes and 40 seconds and just enjoy me uh, stepping way out of my comfort zone in front of a bunch of people that allege to be my friends, go ahead and check that video out. So the second thing on my page, because I posted a video also kind of teasing what's going to be coming up on the program here today. We've got a lot to get into. If you heard the promo for the show running throughout the last 24 hours, we have the Wisconsin Democrats proposing a public option for the state of Wisconsin in order to address healthcare concerns for a large percentage of the population here. Did they get that idea from listening to the show? There's no way to know, but yes. We're going to go into what that looks like, and of course, the fact that GOP will not sign it because a public option does nothing to cut taxes for wealthy people. So why would they sign it? But obviously, the story of the day is the continued escalation, the continued fallout, and the continued narrative change coming with with this war in Iran here. What we'll call Donald Trump's war of choice in Iran. I saw some polling data this morning that had me pretty thrown off here that 85% of self-described MAGA voters are pro what is taking place in Iran right now. And what's crazy is that Charlie Kirk had ran a poll in June 12th to be specific, on Twitter. It's being shared around social media spheres right now saying, should the U.S. get involved in Israel's war against Iran? Just under 490,000 people voted, and 90% of them voted no. I hate to break it to you, but I'm doubting very many liberals or lefties were voting on a Charlie Kirk poll. I'm willing to guess who definitely was voting in a Charlie Kirk poll, though. And it seems like in June of 2025, people were very anti getting involved in this war. I wonder what changed. 920-281-1150, 920-281-1150. There's a problem brewing in the discourse surrounding this war. And it's I'm not going to this like I occasionally, I get broken down doing this show sometimes because there is a hypocrisy in politics that is difficult to avoid. No matter what party you support. But more importantly, surrounding the war conversation, we're talking, and we will jump a little bit more in depth in this a little bit later on, possibly in this segment, if not next segment, about a $50 billion package going to the military in the name of continuing this pointless war that nobody can describe why we're actually doing it, outside of Dale, if you're listening, of course. If you add that 50 billion to the 40 billion that we handed to Argentina in just over a year of the Trump administration, that's $90 billion going away from America in the name of America First, while we're cutting Medicare, Medicaid, SNAP, any kind of social programs that are actually beneficial to Americans, like if you were actually going to do America First, the kind of programs that you would want to see funded. Those are getting cut, and $90 billion have already gone out the door. I'm old enough to remember when Republicans were really, really mad about $115 billion going out the door to Ukraine and Israel and making that a central focus point of their campaign. We are now, granted, the $50 billion hasn't gone out yet, but trust me, it's going to. That will put us $25 billion short of that $115 billion number with 3 years and 9 months left. 2 years and 9 months left remaining of the Trump presidency. You think he's going to find another stupid reason to send a different country $25 billion before now and then? I'll give you 5 guesses because I'm pretty sure I know the answer. It's a very frustrating thing that we have to deal with. And outside of the money, outside of the hypocrisy, outside of the politics, outside of the rationale, people are losing their lives. 6 Americans have already lost their lives. And I had the luxury yesterday of interviewing a Colonel George Mason, on a separate podcast that I do. And I pulled a little bit of that audio for you guys to listen to here in just a moment, because I asked him two questions, and I'm going to play both of them. And during his first question, he brings up the Strait of Hormuz. And I happen to mention, I say, I talked about that for about 40 minutes yesterday in terms of the economic impact that goes on there. But why don't you? This individual was fighting in the Strait in 1984. I was born in 1987, so the guy knows a little bit more about what's going on down there than I was able to ascertain in the 90 minutes to 2 hours that I spent learning about the history of that strait and what it means to the economic world. But excuse me, by the way, as of the recording of this episode, the strait is officially closed, but it is only closed to Europe, America, and Israel. Everybody else is still able to use it. It is just closed to the three of us. So we'll see what kind of impacts that has on the economy going forward here. Every day, granted, it's not as prevalent as when Israel was bombing Palestine, because all of the social media companies have been bought out by interests that are absolutely working overtime to minimize how frequently you see exactly what kind of carnage we in Israel are causing in Iran right now. Again, for no reason that anybody can describe to me. I dare you, 920-281-1150. Try and find me a consistent, and not what you think the war is about. Tell me what the war's actually about, because all I see is a bunch of Republicans in office running around making up stuff depending on the day. And then when 6 Americans end up dying in service in the first or second day of the bombing, the DEI defense secretary gets defensive, no pun intended, and starts saying that the media is talking about soldiers dying in order to make Trump look bad, which is one of the most embarrassing things I've ever heard in my life. And I watched Joe Biden hire a defense secretary that came straight from the board at Raytheon. And somehow Donald Trump seemed to find somebody less qualified for the position than that man. I'm watching Stephen Miller go on TV and say Americans are supporting what's taking place now because it's not woke anymore, which I think just means we're doing a lot more war crimes right now, because I'm watching the limited access I get to the bombing video to see what we are doing in Iran. We are bombing heavily dense areas, not to mention that just the bombing of the school in the first day would probably be enough to make any actual human being with even a shred of empathy want to puke in their mouth a little bit. It's only going to get worse. And when we talk about the fake news media, when I talk about the failing New York Times, I will say I'm expecting media to tell me more about the casualty numbers of the civilians coming from Iran, because I do not view them as my enemy, because I'm not susceptible to propaganda. And I know that I'm not alone in that assessment. And I want to hear the numbers of casualties being brought about by this administration for no reason, for literally no reason. And I want to understand how we have gotten to the point where 85% of MAGA, the alleged anti-war party, now finds themselves supporting a war they claimed to condemn 90-10 6 months ago. There's a lack of critical thinking. A listener sent me a thing about critical thinking in MAGA, and I'm not going to read it because it is an offensive. It's an offensive way to write it out there. But this specific instance, it's pretty difficult to avoid the lack of critical thinking or consistency in terms of what you're watching happen overseas right now. And I think the worst part is that a lot of you listening to me know that had Kamala Harris done this, I'd be doing the exact same show for you guys right now. Hell, is an olive branch to MAGA. Here's Hillary Clinton in 2008 highlighting that we do have a uniparty, but now you have to stand up to your half.
I want the Iranians to know that if I'm the president, we will attack Iran. Whatever stage of development they might be in their nuclear weapons program in the next 10 years, during which they might foolishly consider launching an attack on Israel, we would be able to totally obliterate them. That's a terrible thing to say, but those people who run Iran need to understand that, because that perhaps will deter them from doing something that would be reckless, foolish, and tragic.
The cost of this war is costing $1 billion a day. Yet, and I see David say, and I have friends who can't afford health care. $1 billion a day, and you don't hear any fiscal hawks, whether they be blue MAGA or MAGA, talking about the cost of this war and whether or not we can afford this right now. I've run the numbers. People are claiming it costs $20 billion to address all of homelessness. In 2 months, we're going to, or excuse me, in less than a month, we're going to approach that number and completely crush it. And nobody's questioning how we're going to afford this. No one questioned it when we sent $115 billion to Ukraine. Yet we have a school debt crisis created by our government and corporate greed that they can't seem to figure out a way to bail out a generation and a half of their own citizens because the cost would be too great. And yet we can immediately jump into blow up the brown people mode the second we see an opportunity to blow up the brown people. Anna says it's fine. Trump asked our oil overlords permission before he invaded Venezuela and bombed Iran. Yeah, that is good. That is ultimately who calls the shots, right? Larry says, what's the war really about? I'm still working on the war in Vietnam, and I really haven't figured out what that's all about. Sorry, Ben. And I don't know if you heard me yesterday, Larry. In the final year of the Vietnam War, which I wasn't alive for, but you guys know how people felt about it by the final year. I've read about it. I haven't experienced it firsthand, but I know what the general consent was surrounding that war by the end of it. It had a 29% approval rating. 2 days into the massacre of the people in Iran, Donald Trump's war of choice in Iran, it's at a 27% favorability rating. It is already less popular than Vietnam is. And it's just starting. Give it 5 more months. Sink another $300 billion into this. Watch people die on your screens. And let's see how popular this war is outside of MAGA, of course. They cannot think for themselves. As we are seeing, 85% of them can't seem to find a way to find the spine to stand up to a thing they just claimed to hate not that long ago. Of course, major difference being Americans weren't dying in the war in Ukraine. Americans weren't dying in the genocide in Gaza. I am not saying that that makes it better, but I'm willing to bet that in the eyes of a lot of MAGA people, it probably does. Americans are dying in this one, and yet they're 85% supportive of something that I guarantee you they weren't thinking about 6 months ago because their orange dad president told them to care about it. Jim says the war is about a completely insane man with a God complex who feels the walls closing in on him. The people who knew him best, Epstein and Bannon, talked about how when cornered, he'd burn everything down. The walls are closing in and his dementia is getting worse by the day. I will tell you, it is interesting because on the podcast I did yesterday, people were talking about this as a distraction from the Epstein files or whatever the situation may be. And that very well could be. But what sticks out to me, Jim, is that anytime people say he's doing something to distract from something else, it's always like it's something worse. Like our economy is going in the crapper. And so we start talking about Epstein. Then it turns out he's mentioned 38,000 times in the Epstein list. So then all of a sudden a war starts, or we start murdering people off the coast of Venezuela, or we start bombing Ecuador just because we want access to their oil fields so Exxon could make a couple extra $1 billion this year. But hey, at least he didn't say something positive about the transgender community. That would really be, that'd be real anti-American, right? Like there's a level of frustration that I feel right now because this is going to be the cover for blue MAGA Dems to be able to win seats still, because no one in their right mind thinks what this man is doing is smart or intelligent or a good move or worth watching it continued through another Republican president here. I'm telling you, November's going to be bad. I've been looking up the numbers of what was going on in 2006, once we had kind of hit our limit with the war on terror, that was allowed to continue for another 15 years because we have a uniparty when it comes to the military industrial complex. But in 2006, Democrats really started cleaning out Republicans because everybody was fed up with it. In 2008, a Democratic president, along with a supermajority, ended up in control. And assuming Democrats can get their heads out of their asses when it comes to funding war and doing health care for all and making sure that the citizens are cared for, there's a good chance that the exact same thing could happen, because Republicans aren't going to be able to, they're coming to trans your kids, your way out of this one, because there's not enough people that are distracted by the shiny keys, by the look at the little birdie move that so many of you are easily distracted by. It's not going to be enough to save you in November based on the way this is heading. I'll be real. I'm sick to my stomach about it. I'm going to play. I have a call coming in. I'm going to do that first. And then I'm going to play a clip from a colonel. First of all, talking about essentially dispelling some of my theories about this being about oil specifically going to China. And then talking about how nervous he is about American lives in the future, given the proclamations coming out of the Trump administration over the course of the last 3 or 4 days here. Caller first, though. Hello, you're on Outside the Box.
Yeah, good morning, Ben. It's Gary calling. You were talking about the Vietnam War like people know what the heck that is. I was just thinking you'd have to be 60 or 70 years. Anybody under 60 or 70 years old doesn't even remember it, which
Sure.
It's not funny, but I remember it because I was on active duty in '68, and I remember Richard Nixon was elected because of two things. Number one, he promised to end the war in Vietnam, and if you remember, Johnson did not run. And second of all, there were riots in the streets all over the United States. We were in full-blown riot control training at the time for the internal part. And then we were trying to fight the war over in Vietnam at the same time. A lot of people don't know that. But here's the key thing. It took us 6 years from '68 to negotiate a final treaty and withdrawal from Vietnam totally. And it took us years after that to pay for that war. And we also suffered the effects of the oil embargo in 1973 after the Yom Kippur War, and where the Arab states cut off all oil shipments, and we were in a world of hurt, and our gas prices here went up 350%. Now, if you can put that in perspective, if we were paying, say, $2.69, $2.89 for gas a week and a half ago, we would be paying like $10, $11 for gas today if that same effect went into play. And then you would see people lining up at the pumps and the truckers shutting down on the highway and so forth. That happened during 73, 74. I was on Interstate 80 in Pennsylvania, and I was backed up for 10 miles. They had 4 semis blocking I-80 in one direction, where even the state troopers couldn't get the traffic through. And people had to relieve themselves up on the hillsides, I don't know, in Clearfield County, wherever the heck I was. And that's in the middle of nowhere. Anyway, a lot of people that are 60 and 70 and under don't even remember the Vietnam War.
Yeah, I think you bring up a valid point. And Gary, you know what's funny is I was even having a talk with somebody yesterday about the oil shortage, about the gas prices, and you kind of provide some context there that shows exactly where it happens. You talk to a bunch of people from that era, they'd tell you it was Jimmy Carter's fault for X, Y, and Z, and that's why everything was trending in the wrong direction. Meanwhile, you kind of highlight right there, it's just another example of the military-industrial complex making life more difficult for the rest of us, and then trying to figure out a way to lay that at the feet of a Democratic establishment here. And I see Ben saying that you can't say that Trump has dementia, especially after Biden. was doing what he was doing over the course of the 4 years of his presidency. You're exactly right. Liberals can't. I most certainly can, as somebody who was highlighting that Joe Biden was slipping the entirety of his presidency. Donald Trump is absolutely a shell of himself, and he said that his dad was born in Germany 2 days ago, and his dad was born in New York City. If Joe Biden couldn't remember where his dad was born, that would have been a story for 4 days. That didn't even make it onto this show until you kind of backed me into a corner here. I am allowed to talk about presidents slipping whenever they want because I don't pull my punches regardless of who's in office. So to that effect, I want to play this audio for you guys here. And I see I have more text piling up, but just stay tuned. Listen to this. So this is yesterday. I do a podcast. It's the Minocqua Brewing Times, which I actually got an email from somebody, and I'm not coming at you for emailing this, but he says, I wonder if you see he called it an alliance with Minocqua Brewing is hurtful to your nonpartisan reputation. I've never had a nonpartisan reputation. A lot of people, again, and this, I'm not coming at you, Jeff. I think a lot of people aren't used to seeing an actual leftist do media. I am absolutely incredibly hard on the Democratic Party because I expect them to be an actual opposition. There's nothing really centrist about this party. And if you go on and listen to me contribute on any podcast with Minocqua, you'll hear me bashing Dems. And you'll see faces on that podcast getting red because they're mad that even at a time when Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the presidency, I can find a way to get angry at the Dems' ineffectual pushback to what is going on. So I do not feel bad about taking part in it whatsoever, just to be clear. I want to play, it's 2 separate audio clips, so there's going to be a slight pause in between them here. But I want to play, this is a conversation between me and Colonel George Mason, who was on the podcast yesterday, fought in the Strait of Hormuz back in 1984. He'll talk about that a little bit in the segment here. I don't want to give too much away, but give this a listen. It's a short-ish clip here. We're going to be listening for about 5 or 6 minutes here, and then we'll probably go to break. But so give this a listen.
Yeah, so you kind of touched on it a little bit there, Mason, but I find it, and maybe this is tinfoil hat territory, so you tell me how far off base I am, but I don't think it's a coincidence that we handled our business in Venezuela before we went and did this, given their access to crude oil. We're watching the bombing act in Ecuador, and as we know, both Venezuela and Iran were pivotal in providing oil access for China, who a lot of people in this country view as an enemy. I view as an economic competitor, but I recognize there's a hell of a contingency viewing them as an enemy. How much does what we're watching, is there a chance, I'm not taking away from a single thing you said about Israel, but is there a chance that in the perception of some people here, there's some kind of goals aligning? And also, just as a secondary question as well, I don't know if you saw the reporting, but apparently 30 different base leaders are referring to this as like a holy war almost, that this was brought about, that Donald Trump is here doing things like divinely. And it seems like that attitude is permeating some of the armed forces as well. Have you heard anything about that, or have you read anything about that as well? So oil and then that, yeah.
Let me address the oil, and then we'll come back to that. So there is a nexus here. If Iranian oil flows slow or stop, most of what Iran sends outside their country goes to Asia. So, excuse me, China consumes about 19% of their oil exports and 20% of Qatar's liquid natural gas exports. And there's the Straits of Hormuz. Okay. So Iran, they have oil. I do not intrinsically believe that this particular instance is primarily about oil. Okay. I don't believe that. I believe this is about the U.S. backstopping Netanyahu's dream that he's held for 40 years of putting Iran in the back seat. Will Iranian oil exports impact China? India and other Asian countries, yes, they will. Does that benefit the U.S. per se? I mean, to shift to those markets and realize I spent a year at Harvard, which is overrated, studying global energy policy thanks to the U.S. taxpayers. But I don't believe that has primacy here. But let's talk about your other statement for a second. So there's an organization called the Military Religious Freedom Foundation, and it's run by a guy named Mike Weinstein. Okay. He was interviewed by someone yesterday. There was one complaint that Mike Weinstein posted, allegedly involving 15 people underneath someone who was complaining for them. And then he posted that 200 other complaints had come in. However, when questioned, those were complaints about other religious issues in the military.
Got it.
So unfortunately, the segment got cut off there. He had a lot more to say about it, and I'm going to see if I can bring him on this show as well, because that guy had a lot of interesting things to say. I have a second clip that I want to play for you guys. I've already run way past my my break time here, though. So what we're going to do in my industry is just called a tease. We'll play that second clip and continue talking about what's going on and talk about the funding for this forever war coming from the Uniparty, spurned by an orange dad president who doesn't know why he's doing it. We've got texts piling up as well as a couple comments on social media. So we're going to get everybody involved. Gotta do a quick break here, though, unless, of course, you're watching on YouTube later, in which we're literally going to be right back. So stay where you are, and we'll be back in just a little bit. This is Outside the Box with Ben Cominos here on WHBY and Political Voices Network. You know, I received a text message that this bumper song is the best bumper in the game. If you don't know what song it is, if you're listening on YouTube, you can't even hear the bumper music. It's a song called Peaches. Don't look it up at work or around children. It's a funny song, though. All right, really quickly here, I'm just going to run through some texts, then we're going to play the other half of the audio that I want to play for you guys here. Lenny simply says that Gary was right on talking about a lot of people not understanding what was going on in during Vietnam, which I think is fair. Larry highlights that he was in 6th grade just outside of Chicago for the Democratic Convention back in '68, and the riots were on TV. I'd argue the only lesson that was learned from Vietnam was to not televise it, because that turned so many people against it once they actually saw it. It's why you have Ellison buying TikTok and Musk buying Twitter and all these different groups, and then instead of seeing the carnage that's going on and actually being informed about what's happening, you instead get videos about like why women are dumber than men or whatever the hell's happening on Go check out Twitter these days. It's remarkable. Brian says Trump has promised to ensure vessels traveling through the Straits of Hormuz along have escorts with our Navy. The Navy has said they can't, and the program that is supposed to offer insurance to tankers is a small business program for development in foreign countries. He's throwing crap at the wall to see what sticks. Well, that doesn't sound like him at all, Brian. Ernie says, remember when Russia masked a large military deployment on the border of Ukraine? Well, we did the same thing now to Iran. Exactly. No, exactly, man. And like, I could say something here, but I'm not gonna. But let's just say I was watching the carnage being brought about in the capital of Iran before I got off the air. And let's just say if 0.1% of that were happening in America, it would start a 20-year war on terror. And I'm not speaking hypothetically. Anna says, I bet you'd go on Republican podcast too. Your invites just keep getting lost in the mail. I'm sure. And you're exactly right. I would not turn down any opportunity to be anywhere. I go anywhere people want to talk about this stuff and engage in good faith. And Bruce says on my Facebook page, America has gone rogue with this war. Trump was voted to the presidency, but MAGA has made him a monarch. What can be done to stop U.S. belligerency? The U.S. budget depends on foreign investment in our debt. Shutting down investment in our debt will put an end to this orange toddler god's white Christian caliphate. Definitely would help. Always follow the money, as Connie oftentimes when she sees the things that I'm posting or when she hits me up in the text line. And you're exactly right. I think that's the only way you can put the kibosh on this, because again, the American sentiment isn't there. That's not even up for debate outside of MAGA. And if Kamala Harris did this, if Hillary Clinton did this, MAGA would be beating their chest about America first. Trust me, the Republican Party has lost all wiggle room when it comes to foreign conflict. The problem is Democrats need to know how to capitalize on that, and we will be getting into that. But I want to wrap up my conversation here with George Mason. So Brian mentioned the Strait of Hormuz there, and as I kind of teased in the last segment, Mason fought. He prefers to be called Mason. I don't like calling people by their last name, but if you call him George, he makes you put $20 in a jar. So Mason fought in 1984 in the Strait of Hormuz. He talked about it, and he said you can be on one side of it and you can see the land on the other side. If you didn't hear yesterday's episode of Outside the Box, it's available on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcast. I talked about it. It's 30 kilometers wide. We talked about it from an economic standpoint. We talked about how much oil China and Japan and Europe and Pakistan and then even Saudi Arabia, who ships their oil through there, although Iran is allowing them to continue doing business as usual. We talked about it from an economic standpoint. Let's talk about it from a human standpoint here. This is the second clip of me speaking to him on the Minocqua Brewing podcast yesterday evening. Give this a listen.
So I talked about this for 40 minutes today during my show, Mason, and I'm just interested. How dangerous, because Donald Trump is talking right now about using the Navy to escort boats to make sure that it stays open. And I kind of talked, I didn't live it. I was born in 87. You were doing this 3 years before I was born. How likely is it that these people in the Navy are going to be able to, how dangerous is this? Because you're describing it in a way that actually seems like it's even more perilous than what I was envisioning.
So let's take my numbers of 80,000. Let's cut them. Let's say they have 50,000 Shahed drones. Okay.
Yeah.
Shahed drones can be transported in the back of a truck and a trailer with a rack, a launching rack, with 4 drones per rack. Okay. So the Shahed drone, the average range is about 600 miles. They go up to 1,200, some of the models. So obviously, if the U.S. attempts to send a warship through the Straits of Hormuz, man, I don't want to be on that ship. And they've got CIWS, they've got capabilities, CRAM, they've got counter drone and missile capabilities. But imagine a U.S. ship or two escorting something through those straits and having 5,000 drones. Okay.
Now,
I don't want to be on that ship.
Yeah.
So, Mace.
So that's coming straight from the horse's mouth there. And what's interesting is there's a professor who's gaining a bit of notoriety right now, Professor Zhang, who is known for his political predictions. He predicted Donald Trump was going to win in 2024. He predicted that Donald Trump was going to invade Iran in the name of assisting Israel. And the third prediction that he made recently was that America is going to lose this war. And it ties into what Colonel Mason had to say there, talking about the Shahed drones. There's 80,000 of them, and they cost barely anything to make. When they launch them at Israel or at any of the American bases in any of the surrounding countries, because we have 400 military bases all over the world, and that's why you don't get health care, elder care, child care, affordable college, or any of the things that all other industrialized nations get. When they launch those drones at one of those 400 military bases, we launch a $1 million missile at it. and then it misses. And so we fire 2 more missiles at it. So we're in for $3 million to shoot down this one unmanned drone that costs a couple $1,000s to make, and they have 80,000 of them and can churn out an extra 7,000 every month, whereas we can only knock out a handful of missiles every single month. The math is just not there from that perspective. And so that is not a promising equation for this stupid war of choice brought about exclusively by the Republican Party. But here's where I get frustrated, is that this, much like so many of the things that we talk about on this show, it's kind of one of the main themes of this show, is that what needs to be done, the popular thing to do, the thing that has been shown historically to benefit populations, is known by the people that govern us. When I tell you guys about how boomers grew up in the era of illegal stock buybacks and high taxes on wealthy people, the people in charge know this, and yet they still turn around and act like Bernie Sanders and Ro Khanna's tax on 900 billionaires is somehow against everything American. Meanwhile, a lot of people saying that benefited from high taxes on wealthy people. These are known commodities that it's not like I have some kind of information that nobody else has access to, and it's just a matter of me finding more reach. They're actively ignoring it. 27% of people support Donald Trump's war of choice in Iran. And yet, for some reason, not only can Democrats not find it, most Democrats cannot find the spine to say, not that this is wrong, not that Donald Trump is going about it the wrong way, but that they actively don't support it. When more than 70% of America is willing to say that. I am not confused about who started this war. MAGA started this war. MAGA is 100% the only entity involved with doing this war of choice in Iran. I want there to be no ambiguous nature of what I am saying here. That doesn't mean Democrats have to vote to fund it. Meanwhile, both senators in Michigan, Gary Peters as well as Alyssa Slotkin, Tim Kaine of Virginia, also known as the failed vice presidential candidate of the Hillary Clinton campaign, they are not ruling out voting for more Pentagon funding. Cut the funding. Fund health care. Fund child care. Fund SNAP. Fund literally anything that doesn't involve blowing up brown school children, and walk away with the election. Or be blue MAGA and get dunked on and watch us as we bite our nails wondering if we're going to do 2 more years of fascism because blue MAGA, otherwise known as MAGA Light, can't figure out how to do something that more than 70% of the American population wants to see happen. And Alyssa Slotkin, who the media wants you to believe is a presidential frontrunner, says, well, we're in it. I guess we got to go along now. No, we do not. You don't have to give Israel the weapons for a genocide. You don't have to give the Pentagon the funding to blow up civilians in Iran. You can pull out of this and just let what happens happen, because the warmongers in this country need to learn a lesson. This can't be the way that we continue doing things. As Val says, put America's money back to working for the people. We are not safer because of this. I'll be honest with you. I'm more sure than ever we're going to see some kind of foreign violence on American soil as a result of Donald Trump and MAGA's war of choice in Iran. Don't fund this, Democrats. Show me you're not blue MAGA, because I'm not buying it. Brian says the ignorance is deafening. Exactly. It's because they know we're going to be sitting there in November. I do think it's going to be a bloodbath electorally. Like, I can't think of a single positive thing Donald Trump has done unless I get to the point where I have 10 figures in my bank account, in which case he's probably the best president I've ever had in my life. But assuming you're listening to me with less than 10 figures in your bank account, I don't know what he's done to make your life better other than getting rid of damn Mexicans. Don't call us racist. There comes a time when Democrats have to stop acting like they don't know what they need to do to win. They want to choke out any kind of leftist progression. Gavin Newsom says a 2% tax on billionaire wealth is going too far when 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck and want to see them taxed more. The bill that is not up for a vote right now, coming from Sanders and Khanna, says tax these guys 5% of their wealth, fund hearing and dental, or vision and dental for Medicare, give every American man, woman, and child making less than $150K a $3,000 rebate check, end homelessness, so on and so forth. It's all there. It's all there. Vote for it. Make MAGA vote against it and then vote to send money to Israel. And let's see how that plays with the America First leftists. As per usual, people are calling at the end of the segment. Let's see if we can get them in. Hello, you're on Outside the Box.
Is that me?
Yep.
Hey, Ben, it's Cindy from Appleton. You said that 27% of the population supports this war from the public, and the illiteracy rate in the United States is 28%. Do you think there's any correlation here?
There could be. There absolutely could be. I think I was saying this to Landon during the What's Been Happening segment because we have the literacy report here in the Fox Valley. I was in high school in 2003 till 2006. I'm prime No Child Left Behind, right? And I remember the way people talked about my generation in school, like we didn't know what way was up. Like we were reading at bad rates. And now I look at the rates we're seeing now and they look abysmal compared to when I was in school. It really feels like it was a concerted effort to keep us dumber in the name of not understanding how to think critically in a way about this kind of stuff. I'm not going to say that it's a one-to-one parallel, but you absolutely could be onto something there. I don't think that's any coincidence. That's for sure.
Nope. And your caller yesterday, Gary, I just don't understand. Like you just made the comment that what has the Trump regime done for the middle income people, the lower income people? I just like this Gary yesterday who thought that everything that Trump is doing is
that was Dale. Don't put that evil on Gary. That was Dale. Gary's pretty low.
Sorry, Dale. Yeah. Whoever it was. The point is, I don't know how they don't see that he's done nothing for the lower income and the middle class people, and nothing he's doing is going to make things any better. I just don't know how people can't see that.
No, I can't either. But Cindy, too, like not to take away from anything you're saying, I don't know how long you've been riding with this show, but I was there when I was called a conspiracy theorist because I was saying Joe Biden's economy wasn't working. There's an element of tribalism in this country that this show is all about stamping out. I think some people think, not you, but there's some people, especially in the MAGA group, that think that this show is about pretending that there's merit to every suggestion. No, it's pointing out that we've been getting fleeced, and we've been getting fleeced longer than my entire life. For 45 years, this country's been getting fleeced. That's with total Democrat ownership, total Republican ownership, and everywhere in between. And we got to see these kind of changes happen to the higher ups, MAGA, blue MAGA, everyone in there. If you're voting for this garbage, if you can't find a way to reassess wealth inequality, get the hell out of the way, and we'll find people that will. I appreciate the call, Cindy. You know what's funny is Zohran Mamdani has been mayor in New York for 2 months. And these 2 months to start a year are the lowest crime rates. Crime is down 8% citywide. Burglary hit a record low, and retail theft has dropped 25%. It's funny. The second you start making people's lives more affordable, they stop committing more crimes. Like, It's almost like if there were a talk show that highlighted most crimes are performed out of some kind of perceived necessity and not because you're evil or want to do crimes, like that show should probably be more popular and be highlighting these kind of things. These happen whether it's Democrat or Republican, and it's a matter of people that mean business coming along and changing these kind of things. We're going to make it happen, damn it, whether I have to drag them kicking and screaming or not. I have to get to break. I'm sorry we have a caller on hold. You're going to have to wait through the break here. We will get everybody on, though. We'll be back. Outside the Box, Ben Cominos, WHBY, Political Voices Network. All right, we're back. Ben Cominos, WHBY, Outside the Box, Political Voices Network, brought to you by Roush Plumbing and Remodeling, the plumbing and remodeling company the Fox Valley depends on. All that jazz. If you're just joining us, we spent the first hour talking about what else? Donald Trump's war of choice in Iran. We've been highlighting a couple of different things here, including the record number of MAGA voters supporting it. And again, just for some perspective, MAGA's at 85-2. This is in terms of just airstrikes on Iran. MAGA's at 85-2. Non-MAGA GOP is 56-22. Both of those are support versus oppose. Then it inverts. Independents are 62% to 11. Democrats are 74% to 11. Talking about the complete reversal of attitudes towards Ukraine and Gaza coming from MAGA versus what's taking place in Iran. We played some clips of an interview that I did yesterday evening with Colonel George Mason, which definitely did not put my mind at ease in terms of the trajectory that we are on here. And then we finished the hour talking about how Democrats don't need to fund this. They are not required to fund what we are dealing with here, and yet they are already getting in line to take part in that process. At least a handful of them are. And boy, howdy, would I appreciate it if Blue MAGA would sit down and be quiet, and we let the people who mean business start to take charge of being an opposition party. I do have a caller. Before we get into that, I do want to mention Dale called me off the break, says I misquoted him yesterday, that I said that he said that the housing market was better than ever, and he would like me to retract it, and I am. He did not say that. He said that he thinks it's booming and is trending in the right direction, and he has only noticed that since Donald Trump has been in office. But I also am a bastard, so I would like to highlight that there are currently 44 more home sellers than there are home buyers. That is a record, because not enough people can afford to buy homes nationally. It has been trending that way since the end of 2021. It peaked for a while in 2023, started trending downward until 2024, and has done nothing but trend in the wrong direction since 2024, including 2025 and 2026, which allow me to check my notes. Okay, I don't need them. Donald Trump was president both of those years. So I apologize for misattributing a quote to Dale. However, this housing market is objectively trash. Maybe individuals are doing well with it, but on the whole, it is absolutely a cesspool right now. Thank you for being so patient, caller. You're on Outside the Box. How are you?
Hey, Ben, I had to call. Sorry.
Yeah, what's up, Brian?
Well, first of all, I just want to cover a few things. Comments about the Congress voting on war powers. The water's over the dam already. There's nothing we can do to turn it around. I just wish they would have found their backbones, back in January instead of, or when Trump was put into office. But to pick up where you left off, you talked about 2 or 3 days ago, you talked about Netanyahu's 30-year endless loop about needing to attack. Well, Iran was listening, and they've been spending 30 years burying assets and preparing for the eventual war. They are prepared to last a long time. When Mason talked about the response in the Straits, where they're sending out $20,000 drones and we're shooting them down with $2 million warheads, we can't win that war. Rubio said that just the other day. I don't know if it was a slip, but he said we can't compete with this. When Rubio stated that Israel wanted to start the war and we had to jump in with them because we were worried about U.S. casualties and U.S. assets, and Trump basically stomped on them the next day. Trump had his out. At least we could blame Israel for starting this, but no, we had to jump in first. I mean, if you just sit down and listen and do a little bit of reading, we can't win this thing. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a prognosticator,
Sure. Yeah.
but when they say 4 days, 5 days, when they say 4 weeks, 5 weeks, there's never been a smart bomb war that's been won ever in 100 years. So we're looking at troops on the ground, body bags. This is only going to get worse.
And you know what sucks?
They're prepared for it.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well,
No,
what sucks about that, Brian, is that once you start to see the American body bags, I'm not even knocking people for this. There's a primal element that the fact that this is a pointless war that didn't need to happen because our president's stupid goes out the window, right? Because once you start seeing that happen, it's kind of like, I'm not a violent person, right? I don't do bar fights. I don't do any of that. If you went and attacked a family member of mine, I'm going to do what I have to do to make sure that they're okay. And like,
exactly,
people will kick into that mindset if what you're saying comes to fruition. And I don't think you're far off or fear mongering. Then all of a sudden, the logic of outside the box goes out the window for the human reaction to seeing that kind of thing happen. And Brian, I'll be honest, I can't help but feel like that's just what the Trump administration is waiting for, is for our id to kick in and kind of supersede any kind of rational thought, meaning we do not need to be doing this right now.
Well, let me jump in and just say, does everybody remember 9/11 and how we joined together as a country in just one day? Because we got attacked on our soil.
Right.
All right. Now, I know there's lots of factions in Iraq or in Iran. I know there's lots of factions that fight against each other. When we start lobbing, when you talked yesterday about why are they mad at us? Because we've been lobbing bombs at them for 10, 15 years. I can't even think back that far. They don't like us because we keep killing them from this side, from over here. If somebody started lobbing bombs over here, I think it would get really close to where everybody would join together and say, hey, let's rise up. They can't do that to us. Well, they're already there.
Right.
We're in for the long haul here. And we are not, I don't see a great ending to this. I'd like to be lollipops and sunshine, but there's no lollipops and sunshine. We are in for the long haul, and there's no out. And you can't just dust your hands off and say mission accomplished. You saw how that worked for Bush. It ain't happening. And
yeah.
I'm sad to say, I just wish I could hear something logical coming out of the administration saying this is where we're going. But all I hear is we got them down. We're punching them. We're going to keep going. We don't have endless materials. I don't think we were planning on this. Our hand got pushed. I'm sad.
Yeah, you and me both, man, because this was absolutely avoidable. And I appreciate the call. And I think the worst part is that he got into office alleging to be the opposite of this, and the people that voted for him don't have the guts to say anything. Did you guys see? I didn't pull the audio. I wasn't intending to talk about it today, but have you guys seen the video of Tom Tillis just absolutely eating fascist Barbie, aka Kristi Noem, alive for her handling of DHS and giving her friend $143 million contract? At least she's not trans. Contract, rather. And just absolutely eating her alive on the microphone. You know why he has the guts to do that? Because he's not running for re-election. How many people in the Republican Party do you think are absolutely disgusted? Don't get me wrong. I'm old enough to remember 9/11 as well, and I know there was a particular party that was significantly more gung-ho about military action than the other one was. But I promise you, there are Republicans that understand that Donald Trump contradicts himself every time he speaks. Mark Wayne Mullen literally called it a war. Someone called him out for calling it a war. He's like, no, it's not a war, because they are a cult. They cannot defy dear leader. And the second they no longer are worried about needing to placate this man, all of a sudden the truth comes out, and it's disgusting. It's spineless, and it's something that I have no respect for, if you can't tell by the way that I talk about them. I have never served. My anti-war attitude, me using my platform to push for diplomacy and peace at all turns, stems from a desire to make sure that the people who gamble with their lives to join the armed forces aren't fighting a pointless war, especially a pointless war so that a country that has been genociding another territory for the last 2 years can expand their territory even further. I don't care about what Israel wants out of this situation, and it most certainly should not cost the lives of the American people. And the only reason that it might is because of one political party. And to add to Brian's point, yes, we have been bombing the Middle East for a while. That makes them hate us. But we also fund people. We're about to fund the Kurds for the 15th time. I don't know how many more times we have to give them weapons and money only for us to bail on them and leave them out to dry before they realize we're going to do that again. Spoiler warning, guys. Trump is absolutely going to do that for you. Ask anybody who has ever worked with him if he pays his bills. So we fund their enemies. We install puppet dictators. Hell, that's what happened that's what started this entire Iranian conflict. We steal their resources, and then we tell our citizens that it's because they hate our freedoms. And unfortunately, a percentage of us actually fall for it. I don't understand how we end up there, but we do over and over again. Ken agrees with the point that Brian had just made. Cynthia says, we wasted millions bombing these Iranian drone boats. Iran reportedly painted life-size F-14 fighter jet silhouettes on the ground using thermal paint to fool enemy surveillance. Not surprised by that at all. It just goes on and on here. Anna says there are dumb ideas, and when no one tells these rich white guys they are dumb ideas, we just get more men like Trump in charge. Tales old as time, Anna. I don't know how we reverse course. We got another caller. Hello, you're on Outside the Box.
Hey, Ben, Cynthia in Florida. I hate to call you again, but I was just listening about people coalescing, after another 9/11 type attack. I wasn't down with it when it happened.
Right.
Because I paid very close attention. When we started being told about the plight of Afghan women, I was like, since when?
Yeah.
And then Shah Massoud in Afghanistan, who would have been a leader there had he not been assassinated, warned the United States that we were going to be attacked. And he was killed before 9/11. I told my husband then, something is coming. Russ Feingold read the Patriot Act, so did I. He probably read the Rebuilding Defense PNAC plans, so did I. They said they could not engage in regime change without a catalyzing event like a new 9/11. I am not falling for this again. I didn't fall for it the last time. I'm not going to fall for this again.
Yeah,
We've had enough.
I don't blame you a single second, Cynthia, and I absolutely get it. I appreciate the call, and I think you provide a lot of historical context to that as well. And I think there's going to be a lot of people. I have that talk with the professors. We've had it about a half a dozen times at this point. If another 9/11 happened, would we be able to coalesce? In this era, you'd be hard-pressed to convince. I'll be honest. I'd assume false flag at first, because the polling's so bad on this, because so few people outside of the MAGA cult want this. I wouldn't put a false flag past anything right now. Like, my spider senses would absolutely be up if something like that happened, because at the end of the day, it's about the military industrial complex. That's what both parties serve. Larry's reminding me, Brian McGinnis, I don't have the audio for that one either, but he was a soldier who stood up and said, no more wars, no death for Israel, none of this stuff. And he got carried out by 4 people, and one of them broke his hand by jamming it into the door while they were trying to pull him out. And all the Republicans stood up and said, we need to see more respect for our Capitol Police. Imagine having the audacity to have been in office before January 6, 2021, and have the audacity to say that somebody who served in the Marines standing up and saying, do not send the next batch of Marines to die for a pointless war, is resisting against Capitol Police, gets his hand broken while trying to stay there and let the elected representatives know that he does not condone what is taking place, and to have the audacity to say anything about people respecting the Capitol Police. Shut the hell up. Get the hell out of here with that. Nobody wants to hear from you. Not a single person wants to hear from you outside of maybe MAGA. I have no respect until, and like, Ben is a Trump voter who absolutely disdains what's going on. But the fact is, 17 out of 20 people that voted for Trump are in favor of what they're watching happen right now, and it's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. We have, in the Trump presidency, we have money to war with Iran, $1 billion a day in the name of your freedoms. We can buy Greenland in the name of your freedoms. But housing, healthcare, and public education, that's welfare. There's a snake in my boots. That's welfare. We don't give welfare. You got to pick yourself up by your bootstraps like the previous generations did. Oh, right. We used to tax the crap out of billionaires back then. Never mind. Don't read anything at all. Don't assess anything I'm saying right now. Just please condone us blowing up another Iranian school, please. You know, Ro Khanna, no shock to me at all. And again, I don't trust anybody. For all I know, he's a fraud. But Ro Khanna is never mentioned on any lists in terms of presidential hopefuls or frontrunners or anything like that. He was asked a question at a town hall talking about money for illegals. I'd like to talk to you guys about that for a second here. Because that's how they frame it, right? That's how they get a certain population of people to vote against their better interests, to support sending $1 billion a day for a war of choice brought about by one political party in Iran, and vote against minimizing the cost of your health care. Listen to Ro Khanna taking a question at a town hall. Oops, sorry, amateur hour. Bush League.
It's about $80 billion to have free public college for everyone in America. That is 10% of the defense budget. So instead of, in my opinion, I appreciate your question because I don't want to push back on you, but instead of blaming the undocumented kid for the $80,000, how about blaming the defense contractors? How about blaming the billionaires who are not paying enough taxes? How about blaming an economic system
There we go.
that has not invested in the health and the education of our country?
Oh, wow. I wonder if that message would resonate with a large percentage of Americans. I wonder if there had been a candidate in 2016, if we could have just put all this MAGA garbage to bed and voted for something like that. No, Democrats wanted to make sure that this Democrat came out on front in 2016 and put us through 8 years of this horse crap.
I want the Iranians to know that if I'm the president, we will attack Iran. Whatever stage of development they might be in their nuclear weapons program in the next 10 years, during which they might foolishly consider launching an attack on Israel, we would be able to totally obliterate them. That's a terrible thing to say, but those people who run Iran need to understand that, because that perhaps will deter them from doing something that would be reckless, foolish, and tragic.
For the record, I didn't add the music to that, but it does fit her, does it not? No, let's make sure that candidate raises to the top of the ticket, because that way, that's the real candidate that will put this Trumpism to bed. Whoops. So you guys tell me, what do you think is going to rise to the cream of the crop in 2026? Is it going to be the, hey, maybe we cut 10% out of the defense budget and actually fund all the crap people need so they stop blaming Mexicans and trans people for their shortcomings? Or is it going to be the, well, we're already in this war, let's ship another $50 billion to Ukraine. Whoops, did I say Ukraine? I meant Israel. Whoops, did I say Israel? I meant to the military-industrial complex. What do you think? 920-281-1150. 920-281-1150. And I do want to tie this in to the state level here, if I'm allowed to. Is that okay with you guys? I'm going to go to commercial break, and when we come back, in our states, in Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Democrats are proposing a public option for healthcare in this state. Of course, Republicans are immediately asking how we're going to pay for it, because allow me to check my notes here really quick. Never mind, I don't need to. Public health care options do not cut taxes for the rich or blow up brown children. So we obviously have to question whether or not we can fund this one. We're going to look at what a public option in our states would do for us, how it would work, and whether or not that is something that we could get behind. Or what if they come to trans your kids? We'll be back. Any thoughts on the matter? 920-281-1150, 920-281-1150. Stay right where you are. Outside the Box, Ben Comino's WHBY and Political Voices Network. By the way, that Kristi Noem number wasn't made up. $143 million in taxpayer money going to a media company called Safe America that had existed 11 days before it received $143 million. The address listed for the company is the home of a longtime Republican operative named Michael McElwain. It was an 11 days old company. They had no track record of any business deals whatsoever. They received a $143 million no bid contract. Has anybody informed Doge? Where's Elon Musk? I realize that this has nothing to do with transgender people, but I feel like this is the kind of waste, fraud, and abuse that I have been warned about in the government, and I'm confused as to why. Is it because she's in charge of the Masked Virgin Army? Does she get special treatment because of that? Because I'm kind of confused where the people that claimed to care so much about waste, fraud, and abuse are on that particular story. Are they busy protesting Donald Trump's war of choice in Iran? It's almost like it was all a facade for 4 years. And please understand, as I stated yesterday, long memory and a short fuse. Mickey says, to your question, what do I think? Well, I'm sad everything. I'm sad everything that I said was going to happen. The day Trump's name landed on the ticket has come true, or it is about to. I'm mad. No, I'm angry. And every day I have some thoughts. Is it time to be scared? I mean, I don't preach. I said, okay, let me say this. And I've said this either earlier in this week or at the end of last week. Being informed or being smart oftentimes is paired with being scary. If you want to tell yourself the housing market is trending in the right direction, if you want to tell yourself that this war is going to be over quickly, if you want to tell yourself that people's healthcare premiums doubling as a result of making sure we have funding for Donald Trump's war of choice in Iran was the smart move for America, it definitely is less scary than the reality, right? But it can be rolled back. But the only way that happens, as Brian says, is to start calling representatives. We have more influence than we realize. Data centers are closing down. ICE, while still being a bunch of jags, are not nearly as prevalent as they once were and have toned down their rhetoric pretty egregiously. Pretty emphatically, I should say. Have they not? Being loud enough, calling senators and letting them know you're actually going to have to get a real job if you do not pivot now does work. Outside of genocide in Gaza, apparently, Democrats were ready to lose the election to Donald Trump rather than just stop blowing up children in Gaza. You can't be mad at them enough. That's where you should be aiming your anger, by the way, Mickey, because you can't blame a dog for doing dog things. You're supposed to blame the people that are supposed to be keeping that in check for deciding that the military-industrial complex was more important than doing that. And Karen says, boomer here, so sad I wasn't paying attention in 2016. Didn't vote for Trump, though. Well, and I mean, Karen, the best thing I can say is the only reason that I saw through what Hillary Clinton was is because every subsequent generation after America stopped taxing billionaires in the early 80s was kind of inherited a lesser lifestyle than the one that came before it per capita. Don't bother calling or texting me that your life is better. I don't care. Per capita, it is worse than it was for every previous 5 or 6 years. And it just kept kind of going on that trajectory. I said it all the time back in the day on the show. I graduated in 2010, and I used to say, man, you could go backwards 20 years and forwards 20 years, and nobody's going to be graduating into a worse economy than what the millennials have to deal with as a result of 2 wars borne out by lies and greed on Wall Street. I took part in 2012 in the Occupy Wall Street protests in Philadelphia because even though I wasn't politically savvy, I knew that things weren't on the correct trajectory. I was looking at the job offers I was getting offered. I was looking at what I was required to educate myself, and I was like, wait a minute. I don't like the trajectory this is on at all. And I still maintain, and this is kind of a dark thing to say, but I'm going to say it. If I still had 2 parents, I think my life would be worse because it was losing a parent to an unexpected illness that kicked my ass in gear and made me realize that even though my dad would walk through hell for me, that I had to figure out how to get my life on track because the system that I was told existed was absolutely not the system that was in place. And I think a lot of people are able to shield themselves from that if they don't have anything too egregious happen to them early on in life. And they don't realize it until much later, just how hard so many people have it and how fortunate they are to be in the position that they are in. And I had to kind of have my eyes physically open so that when Hillary Clinton was coming around and everybody was pretending that the status quo of the Obama administration was what everybody wanted to see continue, I'm sitting there as someone who, by the time the election happened, owned a home and was pretty close to debt free, because I did kick my ass in gear. And I was like, I don't know what people you're talking to, but I know plenty of people that are not content with the status quo, and I'm seeing a system that is absolutely going in the wrong direction. You know, when I graduated from the college that I went to, it was $32,000 a year to attend. If you went to that same school right now, it's $70,000. You tell me what job you're going to get. Last time I checked, being an accountant is being an accountant. You don't get paid more because your college costs more. But when you don't have any experience in that, when you're the oldest son, when you're the kind of the guinea pig with things like that, you are told, no, this is a good school, it opens extra doors, yada, yada, yada. And then more and more people wake up to that being a hot crock of crap. So it was easier to ignore this kind of stuff. You know why nobody cared about the war crimes committed by George Bush Sr. and Bill Clinton in the 90s? Because you could work with one salary, go on a vacation, and have a bunch of fancy things in your home, not live like a freaking king, but at least do the basics and not just pay your bills and rent and have $70 left over on the other side of it, while previous generations that benefited tell you it's because you're not working hard enough. So the reason people have their eyes opened more now, the reason people are angrier about what's going on overseas, the reason people acknowledge, I was talking to my dad on the phone yesterday. He said, you know, I have never heard billionaires called out as frequently as they are in the media as they are right now. You know why that is? Is because the wealth difference is unavoidable. The wealthiest 1% always had a stupid percentage of the wealth that was out there, but there was enough for the majority of us, minorities notwithstanding, of course. I always speak kind of generally in that. But there was enough, at least for the whats in America, to not really notice or care about that disparity. And it was once that percentage of people started to grow, once it went from 40% of people not affording a spare set of tires under Bush to 50% of people not being able to afford the tires under Obama, to 60 under Trump, to 65 under Biden, and people always giving you excuses for why it was. And then eventually someone just say, you know what? I think you guys have been letting this happen for the last 40 years. It feels like an epiphany when you're not paying attention, but hindsight's always 2020. So I appreciate you saying that. But at the same time, I don't blame you for a second. Had I been born 20 years earlier, I absolutely would have been a Hillary person. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Because I know how I'm wired. I know what MAGA's offering isn't going to address the issues facing the majority of the population. I'm like, yeah, gay people should be able to get married, right? Like the social issues where you just are kind to people speak to me. And I inevitably would have been I'm with her kind of person. But it's because I was born into an economy that I was like, wait a minute. I owe how much for college, and how much are you telling me I'm going to make at this job? And I was like, well, this isn't any good. This isn't any good at all. And it's that kind of experience, I think, that wakes people up to that. DSL says that Marine put his own arm in the door. DSL, are you just going to defend this the entire time it's a Republican president and then immediately switch back to condemning it when it's a Democratic president? Is that what I can assume? He goes on to say, the Marine put his own arm in the door to create resistance to continue his outburst, so it was his own fault. As a veteran, I am disgusted to see him his own uniform as a prop, not to mention is being highly illegal. He has disgraced the uniform. I didn't serve, but I disagree, because this is a pointless war brought about by a pointless man that people seem content to defend to their, which is your God-given right to do. But I know damn well, DSL, that if that were a person standing up and screaming about a Kamala Harris presidency, I know where you'd come down on it. And I think the frustrating part for me is, you know where I'd come down on it too. And it's just a matter of staying consistent. As long as you don't care when President Gavin Newsom starts a stupid war and you say, well, this is necessary for America's freedom, I'll be right there with you. I just remember how you reacted about the war in Ukraine and making sure we stop Russian expansion and blah, 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 blah. And who cares? It was a stupid war that shouldn't have had our money going to it. Something that I oftentimes said and you agreed with. I'm going to need you to come back. I'm going to need you to come back to that train of thought, even though the orange man is the president. I know you can get there. I've heard you be there before. So in Wisconsin, we are one of the 10 states that have not expanded healthcare. It's us, and it's a bunch of the Gulf of Luigi states, like your Alabamas, your Mississippis, your South Carolinas, all those states that you don't want to be on a list with in any kind of way. It's all in the name of making sure that we can cut taxes for a certain percentage of the population, because trust us, you're never going to get sick. Are you sick right now, dog? Don't worry about it. You don't need to worry about that. You're not going to get sick. It has been proposed by Representative Tara Johnson of Shelby, and this is being reported in the Wisconsin Examiner. It was announced on Tuesday, so I am late on the uptake on this, that it would enable members of the public to buy into the state's Badger Care Plus healthcare system. Badger Care Plus is Wisconsin's name for Medicaid, and it is available for families anywhere up to 4 times, and individuals with household incomes up to the federal poverty guideline of $15,900 for a single person and $33,000 for a family of 3. What Johnson's bill does is it expands Badger Care by coverage by creating a public option, allowing families with higher incomes to pay for the health care plan out of pocket. Democrats in Wisconsin have offered similar proposals in the past that have not advanced. At the same time, the idea has been catching on in other states, although not all of them are connected to Medicaid. Now, this is absolutely a Band-Aid on a system that is broken for the majority of us here. I think we can all agree on that one there. But for me personally, I like the idea. I think that it leaves a lot to be desired. Of course, Republicans are not going to advance this in any way because, again, it has nothing to do with Mexicans. It has nothing to do with trans people. It has nothing to do with tax cuts, so they're not interested. But I have noticed that this has come out, and if you didn't realize, I had to read 3 sentences before I got to how is it going to pay for itself. And yet, when you go into the astroturfed world of social media, and believe you me, it is very astroturfed. That's the only question you see being asked is how is it going to pay for itself? Well, people are going to need to pay for it, but it's just going to offer a subsidized option. I can't stress enough. Every other industrialized country pays 2 to 5 times less per capita than America does for healthcare, and they live 2 to 4 years longer per capita. There is a very obvious way to address this that nobody wants to talk about, and what sucks is this used to be a show about talking about that kind of stuff all the time. But when you have a guy starting a war of choice in Iran, when you have a guy who's mentioned 38,000 times in the Epstein list, when you have a guy who forgets where his dad was born, when you have a guy, you tend to lose the thread on some of the more important issues, like the fact that we should have this kind of healthcare option. And I love that it's being proposed. I think that a spotlight should be shined on it and more people should be talking about it. It's the reason why I'm talking about it right now. But to me, it should be the first step in addressing a much larger problem. I came across an article in Fortune that had the most ridiculous headline that you can possibly imagine. Bernie Sanders' billionaire tax would soak about 900 people to fund $3,000 checks for the middle class. When you look at the failing Washington Post, which allow me to check my notes to see who runs that really quickly. Oh, never mind. I don't need to check my notes. It's Jeff Bezos, who's worth about $240 billion. His opinion page yesterday said Bernie Sanders' 2028 litmus test would strangle America's golden goose. I would argue America's golden goose was strangled in 1983, but what do I know other than that exact objective fact? But, you're seeing the liberal media start to speak out against a tax against billionaires in order to fund the kind of programs like we talk about making healthcare legal for one another. And it goes to give the game away, does it not, that they try to portray the extremists as the people saying that not 5% of 900 people's wealth would fund programs and rebate checks for 79% of the population. And they want you to believe that I'm the extremist for highlighting that, and that the fact that 900 people have that kind of wealth is not the extreme take. You know, if Jeff Bezos lost 5% of his wealth, he'd go from $240 billion of net wealth to $226 billion in net wealth. And the worst part is he wouldn't be able to get on food stamps because we cut the program. Fortunately, we could use some of that wealth to fund the food stamp program, and little Jeffy wouldn't need to worry about where he's going to get that money to be able to afford food going forward, because how would he be able to do it? Elon Musk is worth $850 billion. Half of that is $42.5 billion. You take that off of his net worth, and he's still able to be over $800 billion in net wealth. The Mother Hubbard could buy Greenland by himself instead of us defunding programs here to buy Greenland. And the Washington Post and Fortune and News Nation and Republicans in the U.S. Senate want you to believe that the idea of taxing these people is the extremist stance. Are you brainwashed or are you waking up? We'll have a couple minutes to talk about it on the other side. 920-281-1150. We'll be back. Outside the Box, Ben Cominos, WHBY Political Voices Network. All right, we have no time. We got to fly through this. DSL hit me back up. He says he's only talking about the actions of the man. I haven't formed an opinion on the military operation yet. I'm sure I will in a week or two, but I'm wildly consistent in everything I say and do, which I absolutely love him for that. And I appreciate the clarification on his statements there. It's been part of the show since the beginning, and I was happy that he doubled back down to establish why he felt the way he did. Paul has an interesting take. I think we need to realize that Trump needs to hedge his bets. If he loses the elections in November, the Republicans will probably lose in 2028. He and his cronies will need to find a safe place to land because he will be going to prison in the U.S., and he needs to look for friends that are going to help him. Israel is probably where he is going to live after 2028. I have not heard or read that anywhere else, and I find that take to be fascinating. I don't know if that's right or not. But I do find that to be interesting because I know Bibi Netanyahu's going through a pretty similar situation himself there. So it's almost like all these war crimes and illegal activities should probably be catching up to be frank, a lot more people than just the people in power. But nevertheless, that's an interesting one. And Jim says, is that why they're all anti-woke? If you're awake, you can see what's happening. If you're not, Fox News can drip in your head and you doze off. Well, here's a fun fact, Jim. Wokeness is, like many things in America, predicated on black culture, and then white people took it and made it their own thing, then ruined it. Wokeness, in its original assessment, was exactly what you are highlighting right now. It was something that one black person would say to another in the Jim Crow era, essentially laying out that, how do I say this? The systems that are in place, essentially staying woke to the fact that they're trying to, even though slavery is over, the systems that are in place are designed to keep you desperate and not seeing a path out of the circumstances that you are in. And they would say stay woke, like essentially meaning stay enlightened, stay aware that those systems are there even when they are invisible. Stay woke and continue fighting against the system. Don't break down. Don't allow them to win in this scenario. And then eventually it got co-opted by well-to-do leftists. And then inevitably it got co-opted by Republicans to the point where there's someone in my life who refers to it as yoke. They're too yoke, like Y-O-K or Y-O-K-E. And he doesn't know what it is or how to say it, but he knows he hates it. and that kind of is the trajectory of that whole concept over the course of about 100 years. And so the concept of staying woke actually should be a rallying cry for the 99%. of like, yo, the billionaires are going to try and convince you that you don't deserve social programs, that any kind of assistance from the government as welfare is welfare instead of the way the system should work. And I would argue that if I may, black people, if I may co-opt your word there, and we should use it. We should all be using woke as a good term, meaning like, yo, the systems that are in place are designed to keep us chasing our tails and fighting amongst one another instead of looking for a way to address the obvious wealth inequality and systems that have failed us in this nation. But that would require us to stop blaming it on minority populations. So a certain half of the working class is going to need to come to the table if we're going to get this across the finish line. But I do like where your head's at there. I got to call it a day. Download the app. The show will be on WHBY as well as anywhere you get your podcasts, and it airs on the Political Voices Network on YouTube at 1 p.m. our time every single day. So go ahead and check out the video if you didn't get a chance to check it out. We'll do this again one more time before we call it a week. Thanks for listening. Haley's up next.